What's up guys, shinyhunterzach here, back with only my second or third deck analysis video. This past weekend I attended the Georgia Regional Championships and went with a friend, and he did really well. He finished in the top 64. I ended up in 84th place out of 183 competitors, so above the 500 mark. The halfway mark is pretty good for me. I feel like I could have done better. I faced some pretty tough decks, but I'll get into that in a second. My overall record was 3-3-2, 3 wins, 3 losses, 2 ties through 8 rounds. And here is the deck that I ran. So you can tell by these cards what deck I ran. It is a Virizion Genesect deck with a couple of texts in it. I have 3 Virizion here, and then of course the main attacker of the deck is Genesect with that red signal ability that allows you, when you attach a plasma energy to it, to bring up one of your opponent's benched Pokemon into the active position. And then Cannon does 100 damage for 2 grass and a colorless, and also 20 to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Back to those texts I was mentioning, I ran a 2-2 line of Drifblim. Now this Drifblim is very helpful when dealing with plasma decks and Aromatisse decks, basically any deck that has special energy in it. It's all about this first attack, Shadow Steel, which for 1 colorless energy, it does 50 damage times the number of special energy in your opponent's discard pile, and double colorless energy counts as 2. So if your opponent has 1 double colorless in the discard pile, this attack automatically does 100 damage for just a colorless energy. So it fits well into this deck. It was really helpful in the few matches I played against decks that ran heavy special energy, and it was a big factor in winning those games. And the only other Pokemon I played was 2 Bouffalant. If I had to make a change in this deck, my biggest one would be taking at least one of these out and putting in a Deoxys EX. It really helps for when you need that extra 10 damage to get a knockout with the regular Cannon instead of having to use the G-Booster attack that comes with the A-Spec card. But it would have really been helpful. I never really used a second Bouffalant, and I barely used one. And even when I used one, I felt like it didn't do enough energy to be useful. But there's that. Onto the supporter line now. I did run, like most decks do, 4 Professor Juniper, very, very, very helpful draw card. On top of that, I ran 4N, which allows you to shuffle your hand into your deck and draw as many cards as you have prizes, and your opponent does the same. So that's helpful both early and late game. I ran 3 Skyla, very helpful for searching out that G-Booster or a Muscle Band or any other card you need pretty much. Even a supporter, I had to Skyla for a supporter a couple times. That's another thing I felt this deck could use, is just a bit more draw support, maybe 1 or 2 more draw cards. I also had 2 Shadow Triad. This would get me back both G-Booster and Plasma Energy, as well as the 1-team Plasma Ball I ran, and actually used it a couple of times to get out of some typed spots. And my last supporter is 1 Colress, very helpful in the middle and late game when both you and your opponent's bench is filled up with Pokemon. On to the actual item line now. I had 3 Ultra Balls, as well as 1 Team Plasma Ball, so 4 different ways to search out the Pokemon in my deck. I do feel like this was enough, so I wouldn't really touch this at all. Plus you can get this back with Shadow Triad if you really need to, although the only Pokemon you're going to be searching out with this is Genesect, and then Deoxys if you run it. Next up, we have 3 Muscle Band. This card immediately shook up the format when it came out in X and Y. Any Pokemon it's attached to, doesn't matter if it's a basic, stage 2, EX, whatever, it does 20 more damage with its attacks thanks to Muscle Band. So this is very helpful for all the cards in my deck pretty much that can attack. Next up, another helpful card, we have Energy Switch, 3 of these. This allows me to move basic energy from one Pokemon to the next. Very helpful if you get a Pokemon with energy on it that's really damaged and you either want to max potion it or you just want to leave it on the bench and not promote it again but still use the energy that's on it, because although this deck does have a fair amount of energy, you actually find yourself needing to move it around quite often. Then we have 2 Enhanced Hammer. This is a really good card in combination with Drifblim, because you can Enhanced Hammer away special energy and then come in with Drifblim and use that Shadow Steel attack for hopefully massive damage. So 2 of those. It's annoying when you face a deck that doesn't run special energy, but very helpful when you run one that does. Then I have 2 stadium cards, Sky Arrow Bridge, and this was a nice card helping me retreat my Pokemon out from the active position when they were either suffering from poison or they had taken too much damage for my liking. Of course, stadium cards also do help out your opponent, but I do think it was a nice addition to my deck. There's 2 ways you can really run a Virizion Genesect deck. You can put in Sky Arrow Bridge like I did and have less retreat, or you can put in Verbank City Gym as well as Hypnotoxic Laser, and there were a few points during the day where I would have liked that to have more damage on the field and have that extra 30 to knock a Pokemon out. Like, for instance, if I had a Muscle Band attached to Bouffalant and I was attacking a 170 HP EX Pokemon, if I had a Verbank City Gym and a Hypnotoxic Laser, that thing would be taken out instead of just taking 140 damage. So, next up we have just some single cards that I ran one of. First of these is Max Potion. I only ran one of these because you're really only running Grass Energy and then Special Energy, and there's no way to move it around other than Energy Switch. So when you put energy on a Pokemon, it's almost always there to stay. So Max Potioning is pretty devastating in most situations, but very helpful in others. So that's why I only ran one. Tool Scrapper is nice because if you're playing the mirror match, it can get rid of their G-Booster, or if they have Muscle Bands on 2 of their Pokemon, or things like Float Stone, like Keldeo EX and Float Stone is a nice combination, but you can disrupt that with Tool Scrapper. So I ran one of those. Also, the obvious Garbodor deck, it helps disrupt that a little bit if you want to use Red Signal or Verdant Wind, which is Virizion's ability that says you can't be affected by special conditions if you have a Grass Energy attached. Then I have 1 Float Stone. This helped with especially Bouffalant and Drifblim. Drifblim has a 2 retreat cost, as does Bouffalant, but Float Stone helps get it out of the active, as does Switch. If your Pokemon is asleep, Sky Arrow Bridge isn't going to help you retreat, so Switch, of course, will bypass those status conditions and get your Pokemon out of the active. Then I ran 1 Super Rod. I mainly used this to get Grass Energy back into my deck, but it was also helpful for getting Pokemon sometimes. I had, opportunities where I wanted to put in another Virizion, or a Drifblim and a Drifblim, something like that. So Super Rod's helpful in a lot of decks. And then the most important card, debatably, of this deck, G-Booster, the Ice Spec, that allows Genesect to do 200 damage by discarding 2 energy attached to it, and it's not affected by any effects on the defending Pokemon, so things like putting a Silver Mirror on something, or like I actually used G-Booster one game to take out my opponent's Sigilif that had a Silver Mirror on it, so it bypasses all those, and it's a very, very powerful attack. Knocks out anything that isn't a Mega Evolution or doesn't have some kind of item on it to bump up its HP. And then the energy, of course, I had 9 Grass, some different kinds here. Then I had 4 Plasma Energy. Another thing I would have liked to run is Coldest Machine, maybe 2 or 3 of those. It would have helped me accelerate my Pokemon and get attacks off faster, but it was really helpful for red signaling. And then 1 double Coldest Energy, it was helpful on Bouffalant, and it was also helpful to G-Booster one of these away, because it counts for 2 energy, instead of G-Boostering away 2 Grass or 1 Grass and a Colorless. So that's the entire deck right there. I'm very happy with it, all things considered. I didn't get to play test with it much. I did get help, but I would have liked to play test with it more. I think if I had, I would have figured out that 2 Bouffalant was way too many. I might need something like Coldest Machine or extra draw support, which I found out later that I did need in a few games. But all in all, for my 3rd regionals ever, I'm pretty satisfied, and it was a good opportunity to test out my skills. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. I don't usually do competitive stuff as much as I do just plain openings, but I kind of want to change that and do some more competitive stuff, like on Pokemon Trading Card Game Online, do some games on there, or more deck analysis videos. But I will see what I can do, and I'll see if I have anything new to report to this deck once the new set Flashfire comes out in May. So that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Like and favorite the video and leave a comment below. And until next time, I will see you guys later.